everyone. For a Filthy Lot Entertainment, welcome to Drawn and Cornered. It's the show that corners today's best comic book artists as they answer deep dive questions while they draw art suggested by you, the fans. After the show, you can bid on the art and all the proceeds will go to our guest's charity of choice. So make sure you watch through to the end to see the final product. Today in the drawing chair is Abby Howard. You know her from her work on the weekly episodic webcomic Junior Science Power Hour, the crowdfunded The Last Halloween, the gothic madness of the Portrait of Sal Pullman, and the graphic novel Dinosaur Empire from Abrams Books. Abby, thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to Drawn and Cornered. Can you tell our viewers what it is that you're going to draw for us today and which charity this is going to benefit?
Yes, I am going to draw cryptids. So I'm going to draw just some of my favorite cryptids, which I think is going to be very pretty. Hi, that's Spoons. She's my cat. I am going to be donating to the LGBTQ Freedom Fund, which posts bail for people in jails and detention centers. So,
excellent. I'm sure they'll appreciate the donation.
I hope so.
I wanted to start by asking you, drawing has kind of always been a big part of your life. When did you start drawing, and were you always into comics?
Yes, I have always been into comics. As soon as I found out it was something like just like a format that I could use, I was really interested in it. I've always loved the combination of words and pictures, basically. And I can't remember a time that I wasn't drawing. I've just always been somebody who draws a lot.
Yeah, your rise to internet stardom is largely owed to you being a contestant on the Penny Arcade reality show Strip Search.
It's true.
Can you tell us about the show and what was your experience like?
Well, the show was a web reality show, so it's on the internet for free for web cartoonists to compete and win $15,000. And I was on it. I was the youngest contestant. It was stressful. It was very stressful. I was in a house for 2 weeks with a bunch of strangers who were very nice. So,
wow.
Yeah, everyone was so kind. And I really loved that.
Was your youth a factor?
A factor in me getting on the show, or like stressing out? I definitely felt very out of place. There were people there who were actual professionals who had been in comics like for years. I think Erica Moen had already been in comics for a decade at that point, and I was in direct competition with her. I basically thought I was going to go home every single day. Wow. And I just felt like I was the absolute worst one there. And some people on the internet agreed. But of course, I read every single comment throughout the entire course of it. But
oh man.
Yeah. I don't do that stuff anymore. I don't like to read comments.
But your one thing is for certain, though, your major work for several years has been The Last Halloween. How and when did you conceive this story? And did you always imagine it running this long?
Well, I thought I would be done by now because I thought it would be my main thing that I had to do. But as it turns out, I have other work as well. But it's supposed to be 3 books long. And I've kind of known that from the get-go. It's been the course of the project has been predetermined for a long time, and I like to have the end in mind when I'm working on a project. But I wanted to do that since high school. That was kind of the first iteration of The Last Halloween was during high school. It was not good back then at all. It was terrible. Lonnie, actually, a friend of mine who you know, I believe.
The co-producer on this show.
Yes, indeed. I believe you've heard of him. But he was my kind of RA in a way during university. So he read a lot of my earlier comics. And I'm so sorry that he had to, but he liked them at the time. So that's nice.
Well, one thing that I have noticed about your drawings is that they often tend towards the grotesque and horrific sometimes. But there's also a lot of humor in your work. Junior Scientist Power Hour, for example, is pretty much all humorous strips based on your real life.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask was, why horror and comedy?
I've always loved horror in the same way that I've always loved comics. It's always just been very natural to me, and it's something I want to devote my entire life to. I used to watch a lot of horror movies with my dad. It was like my favorite thing to do. It still is. Like,
Nice.
too bad I've already seen almost all the horror movies in the world. It's very sad. So I have to make new stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You know, horror comedy is kind of like an interesting genre mix, you know, kind of because they seem antithetical. But at the same time, those things are intimately linked through things like timing, pacing, and payoff. How do you ride that line? And do you ever worry you're going too far in one direction or another?
I feel like I balance it. Well, I tend to these days. I actually have a book coming out. The Kickstarter should be next week. We'll see. I mean, I'm not sure when this will air, so it might already be out. But it's for a book of horror comics, and they're a lot more serious than the stuff I'm usually doing. So I feel like as I've kind of matured as a writer, I have strayed away from just jokes all the time. Though I feel like a little bit of levity is good for any story.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm never going to stop telling jokes in horror stories, that's for sure. But and also a lot of Junior Scientist Power Hour, the humorous comic that I do, is kind of horror, but at the end there's, you know, a laugh track plays or something, basically, of just, if there weren't that little part at the end that's like, haha, this is funny though, then it would just straight up be like a mini horror story. So I like to do stuff like that. And I think very much at the end of, because Junior Scientist Power Hour is basically done now. I still do some mini comics here and there that are based on my life, but for the most part, I am kind of shelving it just because jokes, I'm just trending away from telling just jokes and more towards just horror. So.
Right. Well, you also mentioned earlier that you watched a lot of horror movies with your dad. What are some of your favorite horror comedy movies or comics?
Oh gosh. Comics, I mean, everybody knows Junji Ito is very good. I also really like Skelehime on Twitter. You can find her there. And I have a book of hers. Stanley Needs a Nest is, I believe, the name of the collection. And also one of the stories in it. I really like Emily Carroll, of course. So I think there are some really amazing horror cartoonists out there, and every day there's more of them. I feel like a lot of people are kind of switching over to telling horror stories right now, strangely enough, because it's kind of like an escape from the horrors of the real world to kind of manage them by writing horror stories. I feel like this has always been something that horror can do for people, is help you kind of deal with horrible things that have happened to you, or horrible things that you can't stop thinking about, or current events. So yeah,
whatever gets your mind off of what's really happening, I guess, right?
It's like it turns it into something you can actually deal with because it's a metaphor instead of it just being the actual thing that you can't deal with. So
right,
that's how I
also feel. It's really easy to deal with a horror comic because you can always just close it and put it away.
Indeed.
Your stories tend to be pretty free-flowing and don't really follow any typical 3-act structure or anything, so far as I can tell. How important is instinct and following your gut to your process?
Oh, terribly important. Like, I definitely don't tend to. I just kind of let it come, basically, instead of sitting down and being like, okay, so for my rising action, for my falling action, here's what happens. I just like to write a story as it kind of manifests. Yeah, I wish the Crossroads at Midnight, that's the book that's coming out. I wish it were already out so that I could talk about those stories. But yeah, I definitely did that with those. There's one in it. I mean, all right, yeah, it's advertising, right? But it's a huge book. It's, I think, 340 pages. It's 5 stories. One of them probably just could have been a graphic novel all on its own. It's like 95 pages long. And it's definitely a story that's really dear to my heart. And I cannot wait for people to read it. It's about 2 sisters at the beach. And then this mysterious boy who comes by and is just like, hey, I could do magic stuff with the younger sibling. And
all right.
tries to enchant her, or entrance. I don't know what word I'm looking for. Wants to be like, come away with me to my magical kingdom in the ocean.
He bedazzles them.
Yeah, something like that. Bewitch, beguile, I don't know. Words don't mean anything anyway. They're all made up. I can use whatever words I want.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, So I really love that one. And that one very much just kind of came to be completely, and definitely does not follow like a 3-act structure or anything. But
is
anyway.
it now you mentioned the size of this book, that's you're releasing it as one volume? That's the intention?
Yes. I actually probably should have made it smaller, but yes. There are a couple of stories I probably could have left out. 3 of them have very similar themes, so I kind of have like the 3 that are all on theme and then 2 that are fun, just for funsies.
I understand that Yonan Vasquez was a big influence on you, and he seems to have had a big influence on a lot of comic artists these days. What was it specifically about his work that speaks to you?
Well, I really liked, I mean, for one thing, I was one of those Law XD random kids for sure. So that really spoke to me with Invader Zim. That's how he captured my attention. And then I found out that he did comics, and that's actually really, he was a huge influence. Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. I still have my like very old, worn copy that I got in middle school that just like changed my perspective of what I could do. And I very much loved the just straight up, just like gruesome ways that the people would die in that. And I was just fascinated by it. I was just like, I want to draw gore just like this, except maybe even better one day. Yeah, that was big. And I thought it was funny. And I was just like, horror and funny all at once. I love that. And here we are today.
Oh, for sure. I think my first experience with his work was Squee.
Oh yeah, I have that one too. Love that one.
Yeah, there was a period of time in like the sort of late 90s, early 2000s where I just stopped reading mainstream comics completely and was just devouring as many indie books as I could possibly get my hands on. And I saw the cover of Squee, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is for sure something for me.
Oh yes. Oh, and I really liked and I only grow to like it more as I get older as an actual artist now. The I Feel Sick mini comics that he did. There were like 2 copies of it, or two issues, I suppose. Really loved that. But yeah, I loved it so much. Just anything that Yonan Vasquez did. Starting in like my freshman year of high school, I would just submit stuff to Slave Labor Graphics, the people who published his work. Just every year I would have something new that I wanted to submit. I bothered the heck out of those people, I bet. But it's okay.
Did they ever respond?
They did, and that's part of why I kept doing it, because they were very, very nice to me. They always gave me a response. The first one was basically just, I'm sure they could tell I was 13, but they were basically like, wow, keep at it. Maybe one day. And then I was like, all right, I will keep at it. I will send you more things every year.
Nice.
Yep.
It'd be awesome if like one day they just contact you and go, hey, we've got enough material here to just publish a volume of
of your pitch documents. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With my middle school novel or graphic novel, I suppose. Yeah. Oof.
Which
I hope they threw it away.
Yeah. Well, or either that, or if they did keep it, I guess they own it now. I don't know how that works. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably. I don't think I could profit off of it.
Well, you have you actually have a passion for designing weird monsters. What are some elements that you think are essential to good monster design? And what advice would you have for a young horror artist?
Look at animals and really learn why, or what their makeup is and where they come from and why they have different traits. I think that's really important. I mean, I majored in evolutionary biology in school, so don't go that far. You don't have to do that, but it was very useful. And I learned about a lot of different, very horrible animals that still influence my art to this day. So I can't recommend anatomy lessons enough, because I feel like a big flaw in a lot of monster designs that really don't work is just not an understanding of how things move and how things are put together, and how just musculature works, or if you're drawing like it's I think a lot more important than tentacles that don't work like tentacles do. That really bothers me. Like just really big solid tentacles. Anyway, that's always just my eyes glaze over when I see that stuff. It's so boring. That's how I feel. Sorry to people who like tentacles out there.
Oh man, I'm sure we're gonna fire up the comment section now.
Oh yeah, they'll have a lot of words for me.
Yeah. You Now, you wrote and drew The Earth Before Us, a nonfiction graphic novel, and it was primarily a series for kids that shows your love of dinosaurs. Why do you think it's important to learn about dinosaurs?
Well, they're incredible creatures that roamed this earth for far longer than we have even, like, we are a flash in the pan, and they're like a slow roasted, roast. So they're amazing. I mean, there's just so much about them that we can't ever know. And I think that's really intriguing. And I think it's also important to know that so that people will stop. I mean, it's just really annoying when people are like, I liked it better when they looked like this. And it's like, okay, you can have your monsters, but call them that. They're just monsters. they're not dinosaurs. And I also just think they're really beautiful. Anyway, I think it's important to learn kind of what came before us so that we know why the earth is as it is today. And I think it'll also give people an appreciation for the way that things are and the animals that we share the world with, even city animals like rats and birds and stuff. I mean, especially birds. I love pigeons. They're so cool because they're little dinosaurs and they walk around. They eat stuff off the ground. They eat trash. And I think that's beautiful.
Well, I mean, up until that point, all of your work was primarily self-published. So how was it to work for a publisher and to write specifically for a young audience?
Well, the deadlines were really tough, really, really tough. By the end of each deadline, it was basically, I would do 16 to 18-hour days, basically. It was really hard. Like, I would get up, I would work, I would go to sleep. That was it. So that's how it gets on those. It was the same for Crossroads, but I could have pushed that deadline if I needed to. And instead I was just like, no, I will get it done in a year, which is ridiculous. Don't do that. I'm never doing a book in a year again. But yeah, there was that. It took a long time to kind of get, there was a lot of weird, I mean, it was great because I got to be hands off with a lot of stuff, like actual laying out the book and stuff, which always takes so long. But there were some ways where it was just kind of weird. Like the covers, I had basically nothing to do with the cover design except for actually drawing the stuff that was on it, because they would have to talk to like Barnes and Noble to be like, okay, so what size should it be? What font should we use? Like, what's the color of this one? So if I had had my way, it would have been like a big wraparound scene in the wilderness with dinosaurs and stuff. But
I don't think I'd ever heard that before, that a bookseller had influence on it's the format of the cover.
Yeah, it was really surprising. I was not expecting that, but yeah, apparently they do.
Were there any other surprising elements from the partnership of working with the publisher that kind of just came out of nowhere, or was that really one of the biggest ones?
I think that was the biggest one. Everything else, it was kind of like, yeah, I have an editor and stuff. That was my first time working with an editor. And I had to there was a lot of, I didn't have a lot of control over, well, I guess I had, the final say and everything, but I couldn't be as wacky and random as I wanted to be. I know kids like that kind of humor, but of course you're selling to grownups. So my original idea for kind of the the framing device was, instead of, it's a neighbor and she's just a wacky neighbor, it was she was some sort of a fairy godmother kind of person who would just basically kidnap this child. And that was going to be a funny joke of just like, this kid is like, why did you steal me out of my house? And then the parents would have a little plot where it's like, oh my God, my daughter's gone. It's going to be so funny, but not something that is appropriate, I guess. So, oh well. A lot of the jokes kind of got neutered, I felt, just because we were catering to adults and I couldn't do anything too weird.
Now, I wanted to ask you, you have a lot of hobbies that some people might consider strange, like playing the saw as a musical instrument and also taxidermy.
Oh yeah.
What is it about the weirder side of life that attracts you?
Oh, I don't know. The saw was a lot easier to learn than other instruments, that's for sure. And I have since lost that saw, I think. So I'm just full on cartoonist. Yeah. What was the other one? Oh, taxidermy. I myself don't do taxidermy, but I do have a lot of skills, and I like to collect, dead parts. Though now that I'm dating a vegan, not so much.
Right.
So, or not dating a fiance, but yeah. So I haven't been able to acquire many new specimens. I did get a mole, not like a face mole, like a little animal mole in ethanol.
Yeah,
that was really cool. I loved that.
Taxidermy face mole would be a weird thing.
Indeed. This bat wing looks terrible. I'll fix it later. Anyway, and then that was a prize that I, like a prize specimen, basically. I loved that thing. It was in like this little glass ball. It looked really cool. And then one night, the only time my snake has ever escaped from her house, but she escaped. And in the middle of the night, I woke up to just like crashing sounds, and she had climbed up onto the mantle where I kept it and knocked it down to the ground with her big old snake body. Not very nice of her. It smashed, and I miss it terribly.
Oh,
but I suppose that doesn't answer the question of why I collect it. And it's because I think they're pretty. And I like in the same way that I like animals, I also like parts of animals. So I like to surround myself with such things. And also I'm a goth. What can I say?
Have you by any chance seen the documentary Stuffed?
I don't think so. What is it? I assume it's about taxidermy.
It is, yeah. It's a documentary about taxidermy and the wonderful and quirky and imaginative people that practice that art. It actually, one of our CEOs of this company produced that movie, and it premiered at South by Southwest last year.
Whoa, that's awesome! I should check it out.
Yeah,
I love documentaries about weird hobbyists.
Oh, then this one's right up your alley for sure. I wanted to talk about Twitter for a moment. I emailed you an image capture that I took off of your page. I wonder if you received it.
I did. Yes. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you for finding that one.
Yeah. What can you tell us about it?
Well, I found the image online of the little bad. What is it? Action figure. Sorry, I'm having so much trouble with words today. But it's just one of those kind of poorly made things, but it was just beautiful. I loved it. The little smushed up face, it was just perfect. So I had to immortalize it in an illustration. Also, nice. My fiance really likes Dragon Ball, which is also part of the reason why I think they subscribed to some subreddit somewhere where it was just like bad merch, whatever, what have you. So, and they found it. We're just like, this brings me much joy. And I was like, it also brings me much joy. And that's the story.
Awesome. You tweet a lot about your cat Spoons. Firstly, why is your cat named Spoons? And secondly, what's your relationship like? And do you think having a pet helps with all the stress of being a comic creator?
Yes, I think it does. I think it's very important to have, for one thing, something to care for. I think that's very important. Definitely something that I can't really live without. I can't live without a cat, basically. But as soon as possible, as soon as I moved into a place where I could have a cat, I instantly went and adopted one. My poor roommate, I forgot to ask permission to get a cat. But anyway, it's okay. She is forgiven me now.
Were they allergic?
No. But then they played a little prank on me, which I deserved because I just honestly forgot that I should ask someone if it's okay to get a cat. Anyway, I was, 18, 19, whatever it was. So hopefully I could be forgiven for my ridiculous actions. But they played a prank and saw the pictures, I guess, of the cat and then messaged me and was like, oh, wow, I just found out I'm allergic to cats. So it's good that we don't have one. And I'm like, yeah, we don't. And then I spent a horrible, I think it was like a 4-hour period that felt like an entire day where I was just like trying to clean up after and pretend, oh no, I don't actually have a cat. And then just like crying into her adorable little face because I was like, I have to bring you back to the adoption center. And it was the saddest I've been in a long time.
I know.
But then they found out she found out and was just like, I'm sorry, I was joking. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so I feel like that was pretty good. Pretty good payback.
Pretty good payback indeed. You grew up in North Carolina, and as I understand it, have an affinity for Southern cooking.
Yeah.
What's the best Southern dish in your opinion?
Oh. Well, I love biscuits. If that counts as, biscuits and
Sure.
gravy, I think is like, I love biscuits and gravy. Like, I know it's a simple dish, but oh gosh, I just love it. Like sausage biscuits, anything you could do with a biscuit, you can't go wrong. Yeah, I think they're an incredible pastry, if that's what you would call them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, baked good, pastry, whatever. Biscuits are dope. There's no denying that.
Love biscuits.
And I'm also told that you're quite the whiz in the kitchen. I know a lot of comic book creators who also love cooking. Now, do you consider it like a mental break from your work, or is there something else about it that appeals to you other than just eating good food?
Yeah, right. Probably the main one is I get to eat good food at the end of it. But I just like to feed people. I think that's my biggest thing, is that I just really like to be able to cook for people. And it's like a nice little way to show my appreciation of other people, to be able to cook for them. So I feel really bad that I can't have people over right now so that I can feed them. But I gave cookies to the people upstairs. So at the very least, I'm making friends.
That's good. Now, I noticed that there's kind of a comic-related tattoo on your arm. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So this is a group tattoo that I got with most of the other people on Strip Search, the web series I was on, which, I can talk more about that. I kind of blanked when you asked the question, because I was thinking about cryptids. But we all decided to get a comic strip on our bodies somewhere. So most of the other people did it when they were all, because I was one of the, to ruin the series for you, I was one of the final 3 contestants, and everyone else was back at a hotel, which is what happens on some reality shows when you get kicked off. You can't go home because then people will know that you didn't win. So they put you up in a hotel. So
that would have sucked if you were like the first to go.
Yeah, just so lonely. But then you get, eventually it's a lot of camaraderie. So either way you go, it's kind of you're going to be one of only a few people at any given time. But so on the last day, I think, of filming, they all like went out together and got tattoos. So if you see other people walking around with a comic strip, they might be a contestant or just somebody else who got a comic strip on their arms. And every now and then, back in the day, I would draw little comics in here if I was feeling really lazy. But I just don't even see it anymore. So it's like one of those things where it's just been on my body for so long, I don't even remember it. So I will say, people who aren't just like so ingrained in comics almost always are just like, oh, what states are those? I have to answer that question all the time. And I'm just like, oh, it's actually a comic strip. And they're like, what's comics? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Who doesn't know what a comic is?
Yeah, right. Oh, well, some people out here. Like, come on. Did they not have newspapers? Not have newspapers growing up? Did they not read Calvin and Hobbes?
Now, in school, you were doing a Bachelor of Science, but you also drew a lot. Now, why did you decide to pursue comics instead of a career in science?
For one thing, I was really bad at school. I was very, very bad at it. I mostly just drew pictures all the time. I mean, I straight up just ignored schoolwork and just paid attention to comics. It was unsustainable. It had to be one or the other, basically. Like my second year, after I had kind of a really bad wake-up call of like, oh, I am drawing too much, then I basically just stopped drawing and stopped trying to do comics for at least one semester, if not 2. And it was absolute misery. I was miserable. It was terrible. I was already miserable because school was really hard. And I missed comics so much. I just can't not do them. I want to tell stories so badly, and I just wanted to be able to have some creative outlet of some kind. So, yeah.
And can you talk about the first comics that you did?
Yeah. So some of my earliest comics were I guess I kind of started in elementary school. Actually, I had a comic that I was like, maybe I can get this syndicated, like, a weird 10-year-old would. So I was basically copying Sluggy Freelance, though. It was like a webcomic at the time. So I wanted to break into webcomics with my terribly drawn kind of Sluggy Freelance ripoff. And then in high school, I started drawing comics about my pet rabbit, or my sister's pet rabbit, which was a very cruel little animal. So it was very, very in the genre of like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and that sort of thing, like just little one-page stories with this rabbit being simply horrible. People didn't usually die, but she did bite a lot of people, which is true. She did bite a lot of people. And then I did a bunch of other comics that time. I, of course, wanted to do like a space epic, which is no longer the kind of person that I am. I never really was. I was just like, this seems appropriate, but it was not who I am. And then in college, my first year of college, university, what have you, I did a comic called Comic A, EH, for the question mark at the end, because I moved to Canada. And I just basically would put that on like a WordPress site. And it turns out I actually had readers back then. Some of them have walked up to me and been like, I remember your early comics. And I'm like, oh yeah, those first few comics on JSPH. And they're like, no, I remember Comic A. And I'm like, no, you can't remember it. It's old.
Now you've had quite a lot of success on Kickstarter, and it's a method that a lot of comic artists and creators are using quite a lot these days in order to get their projects made. What do you think are the elements that make for a successful campaign?
All right, so you need a video for sure, even if it's really bad. Like, always gotta have a video. Unfortunately, it's my least favorite part of making a Kickstarter, having to do the Kickstarter video. Always just misery, like pulling teeth. But let's see. And I think a small number of rewards. You don't want to like oversaturate like people who are looking at it. You just kind of want it to be clear of like, here's the product, here is something else that you can get on top of it, and then maybe have like some really expensive tiers. Let's see. Other good things. Have some proof of concept at the very least, if not like an actual product already made. Like the Crossroads book is all done, the one that's going to be kickstarting or is kickstarting, and or has kickstarted. Anyway, so that one is fully complete, so I know that I'll be able to complete it in a timely fashion, because it can basically be printed right away. And also be very careful with your timeline. That is very important. Definitely at least assume it's going to take you a year to be able to complete it, or at least for easier stuff like if it's like just one thing that's already finished and you know exactly how long it's going to take to get to the warehouse and be sent out to people, or to your house to be sent out to people, then just make sure you add a few months on top of however long that's going to take.
Now I wanted to ask you, with a lot of your projects being either web comics or published independently through Kickstarter projects, is writing and drawing comics the only thing that you do, or do you have a day job?
I support myself full time on this, which is really nice. And I know that is a privilege, and I'm very, very happy to be able to support myself doing comics. It's everything I've ever wanted. Like, basically, I went to school for science because I thought I should get a day job and that it should be a good one that I still felt passionate about. So I figured going into the sciences was a good idea, because I never thought comics would be able to pay off for me like this. But here I am. I just get to do this all day. It's wonderful.
Well, congratulations. That's pretty awesome that you can do that. Now, Abby, our time has unfortunately come to an end, and now's the time to reveal what you've been drawing this whole time.
Right. It's not quite done, since I still have to put in the blacks and do some cross-hatching and stuff. But you can still see it. Let me finish erasing these pencil lines. I stream art, and whenever I get to the part where I get to do a bunch of erasing, people like it. I don't know why. I guess it like reveals the clean lines, and people like that. All right.
So it's very cathartic.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's
See that
terrific.
very well? Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So there's Jersey Devil. Should add some horns to that one. Mothman, Fresno Nightcrawlers, and just like a nice little border around it.
That's incredible.
Thank you. All right.
We'll make sure to show the completed piece at the end of this show. But if you want to own this awesome piece of art, check out the auction link below to bid. All the proceeds from the sale of this piece will go towards the LGBTQ Freedom Fund. Abby, thank you so much for being cornered with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I hope it was entertaining. It was actually harder than I thought to talk at the same time as finishing a piece.
But you're not the only one. And I wanted to thank all of you guys for watching Drawn and Cornered. Remember to bid, make sure to subscribe, and click the little bell icon to get notified for future episodes. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.